What's up, folks? It's your boy DT 2.0, and today we have the infamous ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 for 2022. But this time, all AMD, and for the first time, the first laptop I reviewed without an NVIDIA GPU. Now, last year's version of this laptop was my best and is still the best value in the business, and I'm gonna stand on that, especially at the current price of about $1,250, which you can catch on sale at any time and every now and again. This one, well, we gotta have a conversation. Let's get it. Now, first things first, I know a lot of people will retort to me saying that this was one of the top laptops last year because it couldn't push AAA games and it couldn't compete. But why I kept coming back to this laptop is because of the design and portability of it, along with the performance and the price, of course. It wasn't made to be a high-performing machine, but at the same time, it did compete with the top-performing contenders. Now we have some upgrades. Can this new goodness hold its own with some of the greats, even its former self? Let's do a spec rundown first before we get all into that. This beast sports the AMD Ryzen 9 6900HS, so we're done with 5000 series, folks. 16 gigabytes of RAM at 4800 megahertz, a 1 terabyte SSD, a 14-inch display that is a crisp 2560 by 1600, but instead of increasing the refresh rate, they go back down to 120, like the year before last. But it is a blistering 500 nits, and we're going to talk about the display later. A keyboard that's lighted, same as last year, but it is RGB, great, but it's only one zone, not so great. And we're going to talk about that later. The AMD Radeon RX 6700S with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, this is what I'm most interested in, as I can finally put something up against NVIDIA besides another NVIDIA. So hopefully, with my results, y'all can see that AMD can finally compete. A camera with Windows Hello, so great to ASUS for finally adding a camera to the G14 line. And not only did they do that, they added the Windows Hello feature. And new this time is Dolby Atmos capability. Of course, you have to use your headphones for that. Now, picking this thing up, it's extremely light in comparison to, say, a MacBook Pro 14, as it's just 3.6 pounds. I still love the shimmer on top, along with the tasteful tab in the lower corner. There are vents on each side and a huge vent in the rear with a nice little design to it. I said it before, it kind of looked like it could have been an Alienware if Alienware didn't cheap out with the X14 and just copied the X17 and X15 models, but took the racetrack lighting out of it. But I digress. Woosah. On the left side, you have the power input, HDMI out, a USB Type-C port that can be used for charging and as a display port, and a headphone microphone combo jack. On the ass end, we have nothing but vents and some cool-ass ROG branding. On the right side, you have two USB 3.2 Type A ports, another USB Type-C, but this one does not have charging capability, but can be used as a display port. And last is a micro SD card slot, which I think is pretty useless for my personal needs, as I mostly use full-size SD cards. I got this from Best Buy, and the price was $16.50 before taxes. So that's an increase of about $150 over last year's model when it was new. So I guess that's that COVID inflation. Now, y'all know the routine. This is a consumer review, and I'm giving you the perspective or opinion from the customer, me, who may or may not be experienced when dealing with computers or laptops. When all you want to know is, hey, when I get this motherfucker home, is it going to work like it's supposed to? With that, I'll give you my likes, my dislikes, concerns, and my overall recommendation. And I'll add some gameplay at the end as an extra little bonus. Is this thing a keeper or is it going back? Let's see what we got here. Like number one, and that's the build quality. I love the way this thing feels. It's solid, it's metal, it's plastic, almost no flex. The design is thin and extremely compact. I can toss this laptop in a bag and not worry about it taking up too much space or being heavy. They did a good job by not just going overboard with the complete redesign. We didn't need that or want that because we liked the way it was. We just wanted some updated guts, which they pretty much gave us. I still love the way the vents are positioned and how the slots are tasteful with the design in the back and that ROG branding. I hit last year's version by not having an Ethernet port, but this time I'm not going to hit it because I found that I never used it nor needed it with today's Wi-Fi speeds. I'm loving the all white now, as it reminds me of that old MacBook before Apple went all aluminum. I still love the way they made the hinge where it lifts up the laptop when it's fully open to allow more air to flow underneath to keep it cool, and the branding badge on here is in that same tasteful place. This laptop is small, compact, powerful, and extremely lappable, just like a 5.2 stripper. And I probably shouldn't have said that. Like number 2, the display. I love the changes because I'm a sucker for a crispy, bright display, which is why I'm such a big fan of 4K OLED displays. At 2560 by 1600 for a PPI of 215, that's iPad level, folks. Playing games on this just looks great. At 500 nits, you cannot have this thing at full brightness while, say, surfing the web or while the screen is all or mostly white, because you'll feel like Cyclops from X-Men. I kept it under 50% brightness the entire time and didn't even realize it because I thought that was the max brightness. And yes, it's only 120 hertz, but on a screen this size, that's more than acceptable to me. Your gaming visual experience will be great using this laptop. Viewing angles are right on par with other displays of this type, and black backlight bleed is very minimal with only a noticeable amount in the lower left corner. But you won't see it unless you're looking for it, which most people do. The great thing about this screen at 1600p is that you can still drop it to 1080p and it'll still look great because the PPI is still at 157 and more dense than any monitor in your house. Well, definitely any monitor in my house. Like number 3, and I normally talk trash about not caring about battery life on gaming laptops, and I still don't, but in this case, battery life is at MacBook Pro level. You can easily get 6 to 8 hours not gaming. I had to pause and say this, not gaming. So you can feel comfortable taking this to school or work without that power brick and adding extra weight to your bag. Combine that with the size and lappability, 5.2 stripper, and you're in mobile work heaven. It's just that good. So no worries on the battery life while you're not gaming. And I'll probably take the brightness down from 500 nits, which you'll probably do anyway. Like number 4 is the keyboard. Now, I actually like the keyboard feel. I used to love it, but after having so many units in here, it could be better. It's still better than most though. It just doesn't compete with my personal best in the business from Lenovo's Legion line and Alienware. The key travel is great, feedback is good. It could be better though. I like to see a little bit more resistance or stiffness in the keys, but that's my personal preference. I love the layout with the shortcut keys that are completely separated from the rest instead of stuck under a function key. And last year's, I gave the lighting a little props for being better than 2020's version, which was shitty, but it still could be better. It is RGB, but it's one zone, and there's just too much light leakage and just looks cheap to me. Additionally, while they did change the keys to white, the lighting just can't provide enough contrast to make it look good enough, like say in the Alienware M line or any of the Lenovo's line, because their keyboards are darker. To be honest, unless it's completely dark, I just keep the lighting off. It looks better, and in my opinion, gives me that much more battery life anyway. The trackpad is smooth and responsive and feels great. It's not MacBook Pro or Razer quality, but still great for the small amount of time that you'll use it. But overall, I'm digging the keyboard and trackpad combo. Next is the Armory Crate. What is Armory Crate? Well, Alienware has Command Center, MSI has Control Center, HP has a knockoff Command Center, and ASUS has what they call Armory Crate. I rank this as number 2 to Alienware's Command Center as far as usability. My preference, yours may be different. Everybody has their pick, and mine is just Alienware Command Center for its simplicity. But this is a close second to me. There are loads of information that could have a video of its own, but I won't go in depth. I'll just show you what's on the surface. I love how all the information is contained on one page, and just one page with a few slides over. CPU, GPU speeds and temps, fan speeds, RAM usage, SSD usage, you name it, it's available. Even how loud the machine thinks the fans are. Crazy. Who thinks of that? That takes some thought and user feedback to even think about adding that. That just shows you that ASUS is listening. Armory Crate is slowly moving to my number 1. Just don't use that gimpy ass iPhone or Android app which allows you to use your phone to change modes. Cool thought, but that shit sucks. And my final are the speakers. Now, the speakers are more than adequate and actually provides a little low end. It's still a nice, good, all-around crisp sound that's easy on the ears. You won't be disappointed with these speakers as far as the size, as they are loud enough to drown out even the fan noise. So that's a definite plus. They have speaker grills on the top on each side of the keyboard and on the bottom on each side. Now, you won't be using this in lieu of external speakers or headphones, but if you're listening to a podcast, some music, or a meeting with some friends, these won't disappoint. They are way better than some of the other laptops I reviewed, and I'm looking at the entire MSI line, who basically just uses fucking used cell phone speakers in all of their laptops. Shame, shame. Now on to the unfortunates. Dislike number one, and I don't have that many, folks, so I'm not going to nitpick on this laptop like I did last year. So I only have a couple. And number one is the camera. Now, while there is a camera, finally, that also has Windows Hello capability, finally, it's only 720p. And it looks like an iPhone 5 front-facing camera. Not even the 5S. Come on, folks. I get it. The last version of this didn't even have a camera at all, and they listened by putting one in this model, but give me an upgrade with that $150 price increase. Don't gouge me for my COVID money. And my final dislike, and yes, I'm nitpicking, even though I said I didn't, is the power input location. And I get it because of the design where it lifts the back up and lets more airflow underneath. I get it. It's great. And I get that there's probably nowhere else to put it. But here's one recommendation. At least slide it to the rear so I can tuck the cable in like Red's chain on Friday. You have a vent blowing hot air directly onto a power cable, and to me, that's just not a good idea, right? It may cause no harm, but who knows? That just doesn't sound like a good combination. Now, if it was chosen to be kept here, then don't give me the angled power connector. Allow me to have it coming straight out the side where it doesn't angle anywhere. That would be my personal preference, but again, I digress. But overall, unless I'm gaming, this thing will be unplugged while it's sitting on a desk. So technically it's no bother to me, even though it is a gaming laptop. So, Well, that's it for the unfortunate, folks. So I'll move on to some performance numbers, and I'll compare this just to last year's version with the Ryzen 9 5000 series and an RTX 3060 Max-Q, so you can see if you can save some money by getting the cheaper version. Can AMD Radeon compete to where this thing is the better buy? Let's roll into Port Royal. Now, Port Royal is a 3D Mark ray tracing test, which tests the performance for each. We have the G14 2021 coming at 4503 and G14 2022 coming at 3745. Now here we have a 17% decrease in performance for the newer model. But let's just be real. This is not a laptop that's made for ray tracing. It's not made to run AAA games at max settings, so I can't take too much from this test or from this laptop. So in my opinion, it's not made for it, so I kind of give it a pass. I'm not going to hate on it. Now moving on to Time Spy Extreme, which tests 4K performance, and I only use the 4K version of this test because it pushes the GPUs to the max. If you want to know what the 1080p version of the test would score, you can basically just double the 4K score. But anyway, as you can see, the performance is pretty much the same with only a 3% difference, with the G14 2021 coming in at 3708 and the G14 2022 coming in at 3831. And when I ran this test over and over again, they were getting closer and closer and further, so it really wasn't much difference. So we can wipe that one off the table. Now, running the Time Spy Extreme stress test, try saying that 5 times fast, we have the G14 2021 scoring a 98.8% and the G14 2022 scoring a 97.7%. Now, after running the stress test, we see that the CPU and GPU runs about 10 degrees warmer in the newer model. Now, I ran it multiple times, and each time it cruised at 83 to 84 degrees constantly. So overall, it does run warmer, but during the entire test, it never touched 90 degrees for all you folks that are asking, or that's going to ask in the comments. But in comparison to the G14 2021, it just cruised at 70 to 72 degrees. So if temps are your concerns, there you have it. Now on to the real world by running Shadow the Tomb Raider, and to compare these two models fairly as I could, I dropped the 2022 G14 version down to 1200p, as close to 1080p as possible, and the scores were just as expected. worse than last year's version with ray tracing on, and better than last year's version when ray tracing off. Scarily, it's the same percentage, 17%, for the synthetic test and the real world test. G14 2021 with ray tracing on ultra, 60 frames per second, with ray tracing off, 83 frames per second. G14 2022 with ray tracing on ultra, 50 frames per second, worse, with ray tracing off, 93 frames per second, better. As you can see with the performance, there's really not much of a big gain that you're getting by getting the newer model. But I'll save my actual comments on that for my recommendation. But now on to the concerns. To be honest, I'm not overly concerned about this machine. I never had an issue with any of the previous models. They all performed great for what they were, and they were durable, but I take care of my machines anyway. I can't speak on customer service because it's just been that good, or they've just been that good. I haven't had to deal with them. Now, my biggest concern with this one is all of this white, which can get dirty or stained over time, especially on the keys, which you'll touch the most. In the past, it was silver, so dirt was not visible or a concern. The coating on the cover in the past has been great and easily cleanable, but I barely touch it anyway. In the inside though, where it's changed, there's constant touching, and I assume it will get dirty at this point. So if it gets nasty over time, I'll update, but for now, it's just a small concern. Anyway, let's move on to my recommendation. Out of a scale of 1 to 10, where do I put the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 2022 All AMD Edition? Well, last year it was a 9.5, but sadly, shockingly, I have to drop this one down a few notches. While they did improve the display, added RGB lighting, a camera with Windows Hello, battery life that's king, performance is on par, it's just not a big enough jump in performance to validate the $400 difference in the price of the 2021 version when on sale, which is quite frequent. Don't get me wrong, this is a great looking and performing machine, even with the AMD Radeon 6700S GPU. But the performance gap was just not big enough for me to feel comfortable dishing out all of those extra funds just to say I have the latest and greatest G14. I'm not saying anything bad about this laptop. It's still great, and if you got the money, go for it. But I'd save that cash and get some accessories while getting the 2021 version if you can still find that one new, or wait till this one goes on sale. This was a good first experience for my first test with the AMD Radeon GPU, and now I won't turn away from laptops with it like I used to. So while I don't highly recommend this machine, I do partially recommend this machine, but only for its lack of value. The price is just a little off in my opinion, but if you can afford it, you won't be disappointed, and that's guaranteed. Anyway, that's all I got, folks. If you have any questions, hit us, and I mean all of us, everybody who's watching this video, in the comments. Once again, this is DT 2.0. Thanks for watching. Deuces.
Same page, sister. We both know it's too far for you to stretch.